WRMN AM 1410, the talk of the town. Tune in and turn it up.
He's the anti-woke warrior of the Northwest suburbs. Always looking to the left to expose Democrat hypocrisy. On a crusade to turn the Northwest suburbs red again. He's the Northwest suburbs' old Jeff Michaels. And this is the Jeff Michaels Show on 1410 WRMN.
Now, hello. How you doing? Yes, this is the Jeff Michaels that you heard about at the during the intro. My name is Jeff Michaels. How you doing? Fulfilling a lifelong dream. Just give you a little bit about myself. I am a local Northwest suburban. I was born in Ohio, but my parents moved us here when I was about 3. Then in the early 60s, I was about 4 years old when my father bought our first house in Hoffman Estates. This is before Hoffman Estates was a town. It was just a subdivision. In fact, it was a subdivision by the builder Hoffman Homes. You might have remembered that if you live in the area. It was around for a long time. And named his first big community Hoffman Homes. Kind of Trump-like, isn't it? And his name on the community. And this was before it became a town. This is back when it was just a subdivision. In fact, I have a video of me when I'm about 4 years old walking around the back of our house when we had just moved in. This was Hoffman Estates off of Arlington. This is where, if you know where Highland meets, I believe, Gulf Road, about 2 or 3 blocks in from it was the first section of Hoffman Estates. I've got a picture of me running around, no sod, no trees, no nothing, out in the middle of nowhere. So that was that. I also lived in Buffalo Grove and Long Grove for a lot of years, lived in Wheeling. My 2 kids were both born at Lutheran General, both went to Stevenson High School. So I am not an out-of-towner, and I have lived through all the ups and downs of the Northwest suburbs in the Chicago area. So that's that. And so over the years, I've been listening to conservative talk radio. Always wanted to do this. I actually used to be a disc jockey. I worked on a bunch of FM stations in the area. Did it until the late 90s. Then went back in 2013. Just did it for fun on the weekends. But other than that, been listening to nothing but AM radio, or to conservative talk radio, which is mostly on AM, which becomes harder and harder as the years go by because newer cars come out without AM radio. I understand that, that the electric cars don't have AM radio, I guess for technical reasons, but nobody seems to be buying them these days. We bought a car a few months ago and there was nothing but a ton of electric cars sitting on every lot. And at that point, the regular gas cars were a little harder to get. But so many other cars, even like I heard newer Porsches and cars like that, they're not putting AM radios in. They figure, I guess, if you're going to listen to an AM station, you can figure it all out. You can feed it in through your phone or whatever, which I've done on the cars that I don't have an AM radio in, but it's kind of a pain. They put these real nice stereo systems in cars now, and all I want to do is listen to contemporary radio, which is on the AM. So, it becomes more and more of a challenge. Anyway, I didn't. So as time has grown and I've been an adult, I was a Democrat in my earlier days. In my mid-30s, I switched over to the conservative side. I wasn't really into politics, I have to say, which I guess at the end of the day is kind of parallel with being a Democrat, because so many Democrats that I know of, not a lot, but some, really don't pay attention at all, and they start paying attention, when an election comes around, maybe. Just seems like my people I know on the right are a little bit more focused on what's going on, but that's another discussion. But as I've grown this major contempt for the left over the years, of all my complaints, one of my main complaints is that they have no goal. They don't have a goal. They'll come out and they'll have all these ideas, universal health care and expenditures for this and pay for that and all these things. When you ask them, okay, well, there's no limit and there's no stopping to what you're going to ask for, what you think that we should be incorporating into our society, into our government's oversight and financial involvement. But at the end of the day, if you got everything you want to get, you snap your fingers and now the world was where you thought it should be with all of these ideas as to where it should change. Everybody should be equal, or they should all be rich, or they should all have a certain kind of car, or they should never have a certain kind of car. So we'll all be equal, whatever it is. If you ask somebody to actually try and give an example of the goal that they might have, at the end of the day, they can't give you one. And they can't give you one because, A, there is nothing realistic to end up at. That's why so many communist and socialist ideas have never worked out. Don't tell me China's worked out. It's not worked out. I don't have any examples in history of any one-party system where the voters had no choices. They just had to deal with whoever was in power, where it worked out for people. There's no examples. I think God's thought as to how man should live, that's what Western society was pretty much kind of what it follows. You are put in this world to take advantage of being here, happy of the opportunity. It's different for everybody, but at the end of the day, you make your own way for yourself, and you are successful in this world based on the focus and the work you put into it and the priorities and all those things. Doesn't mean everybody in every group is going to end up the same way. And so I'm going to give you my philosophy. I'm going to start with kind of what my philosophy is and what drives my politics. And I think it then starts to give a better understanding as to where I go and where a lot of conservatives go with their thoughts. I think it's based mostly in common sense. It's based mostly in the keeping of civilization. And I think there is a goal. And my politics, my political endgame is driven by what I think is realistic, what I think is globally realistic, which is, I think, what God intended for us in terms of giving us the opportunity to be born and live and make something of ourselves. And which doesn't mean that everybody's going to end up the same. And that's just the way life is. So I'll start. I know we're going to be stopping for a break here in a few minutes. So I'll get into it, then we'll stop, then we'll come back. We're going to also talk about how the two Republican parties now exist. There are two absolute Republican parties. There's the old one and there's the new one. And almost by the day, the new one is growing. The small one is getting smaller. We're going to talk all about that. How the Republican Party is, and both parties are reorienting in terms of who's following what. I mean, the change that's happened, and when you see some of the groups that have switched from one side to the other over the last couple of years, is astounding. Something I never thought I would live to see. Whoever thought, for example, that you would see the president of the Teamsters Union speaking at the RNC? I mean, who would ever dream of that? Now, they didn't officially endorse Trump. They came out and they officially endorsed neither. Not sure why, because when they polled the Teamsters Union, like the next day, I think Trump won like 52 to 35, some huge difference. So that's out there too. And if they just backed their members in terms of who they were backing, they would have backed Trump officially, but they didn't. They just stayed neutral, but showed how the members voted. So at the end of the day, they said it. And who would have thought that? The Teamsters and the Republican Party. You know, there's so many things that are happening that I think are good. You would have never thought about in a million years. And I think these are all good signs in terms of why the good is winning, or the good will win, why the common sense is winning or will win. And, it's so much of this that's related you can talk about. I mean, so many on the left accuse everybody on the right of all these things being racist. Trump is racist. Every time I've heard somebody on Twitter, I've become big on Twitter the last couple of years. I don't know why. I've become addicted to it. Now called X. Anytime anybody calls Trump a racist, I'll often come on and I'll say, okay, if he's a racist, we won't tolerate that either. Give me an example. Boom. Either they throw out the same 2 or 3 things about the Central Park 5 thing that he wrote, or his father didn't rent to blacks. There's answers to all of that where they say he didn't rent to blacks. People take these things and they twist it, and they just don't want to look at it in the whole picture. They just want to see what they want to see. And when you take a look at it, you realize there's so much more to look at. And so, like I said, when they call Trump a racist or a misogynist, okay, we wouldn't tolerate that either. Give me the examples. They disappear. So we'll talk about all that. We're also going to talk about and hear some clips from the Kamala Harris interview with Bret Baier on Fox News the other day. And if you listen to that, if you watched her thing on 60 Minutes, when it was supposed to be more friendly, she's flunked every one. She never answered one question. And obviously her whole goal, her whole plan with Bret Baier was just to filibuster and keep talking, not answer the question. She didn't answer one question of his, not one. And we will examine that and prove that a little deeper in just a little bit. We'll be back just after these. It's 116 at 1410 WRMN.
If you're in charge of purchasing coring bits or diamond tooling for an engineering or construction firm, you're gonna want to hear this. 4Core Biz delivers a critical missing component in the market. Our team of trained experts make sure that you receive a full valuation of your actual coring needs to ensure that you're getting the optimum performance out of all your core bits and machines. A cheap core bit is just that, cheap. It costs less but bores far less holes and costs more per hole. Our bits cost a little more but bore you a whole lot more holes. 4 times more. Give us a shot and we'll send you your bits before you pay us a dime. 4Core Biz. Visit us at 4corebiz.com. That's the number 4, COREBIZ.com. Or call 888-831-9557. 4Core Biz.
Yearning for the time when the question, do you want to get something off your chest, had nothing to do with gender-affirming care. It's Jeff Michaels on 1410 WRMN.
Welcome back. I got a phone number here, by the way, in case you want to call me anytime. Whether you want to call me and be on the same side, or you want to debate against me or debate me, they're all welcome. In fact, if you want to debate me, you go to the front of the line. Not that it's but 847-931-1410. It's the Jeff Michaels Show on 1410 WRMN. We're talking about the old versus new Republican Party and the shifting of the demographics within the two parties. And it's really quite fascinating when you think about it. And I can't say I'm that surprised, because I've always thought, when I see how off the wall the left goes so often, especially the hard left and the far left, and which I should clarify. When I say I've grown this contempt for the left, it's really for the hard left, which up until 3 years ago was really the fringe. They've always been there. They've always had this ridiculous, no goal, sky's the limit, basically socialist mentality. But it was fringe, and you knew they weren't going to have much of an effect on either party overall. Well, that has changed. I believe that changed, by the way, with Barack Obama, who, even though was also very much of a moderate liberal at the time, he really shifted, or his far left eventually came through. And a lot of that, he's even pushed in that degree since he left office even more. And of course, the times have changed a little bit as a result. I think partially as a result of what he did, but we're going to save that for other shows. But when you look at, for example, they're talking about the black population that seems to be coming over to the Trump side. And all the polls are showing there's going to be at least 20% of black men, probably more. I don't remember if it's 20% of black men or 20% of black voters overall, but men are the higher amount of it. Whatever it is, a big portion, the highest since Eisenhower, potentially, in terms of the black percentage of the vote, which is just mind-boggling when you think about it. And when you go, and it goes right back to that same question when somebody calls him a racist. Okay, give me an example of when he was a racist. Well, one of the things that people talk about is that he didn't rent to blacks. Well, I'm going to tell you the truth about Donald Trump. And I should also establish that beginning of this election, I was actually a DeSantis guy. He was my guy. But that started and ended pretty quickly. And so I'm on the Trump train. And, you know, at the end of the day, whether you love him or hate him, he's done so many things to change the Republican Party, in my opinion, for the better, that'll last way beyond his involvement. That's another discussion. But when you look at the high percentage of black voters that are coming over, you realize, okay, there's a reason why when you ask how he's racist, they can't really tell you. Like I said, a lot of times they'll bring up the example of that he didn't rent to blacks. That's not what the fact is his father, Fred Trump, when he started the company, he built almost exclusively rental buildings, mostly in Queens, some in the Bronx. I think he did a couple in Brooklyn, nothing in Manhattan, but and he might have done a couple things on Long Island, but it was mostly in Queens where he was building rental buildings that they kept and they, and they rented out. They had a couple lawsuits, I know, during the 70s and or early 80s, where supposedly they weren't renting to black people. They came back and said these were just people that didn't pass credit scores, and that's why they didn't rent to them. And you never know what the truth is. And I'm not justifying it at all. You know, there's certainly things that are were more for right or for wrong, justifiable by society at a certain time. I mean, society justified slavery for a while. So, you know how, the world sees things changes over time. But the fact was that the Trump organization was a rental organization that built and maintained these rentals. In the mid 80s, Donald took it over and Fred basically retired. And they sold, at that time, most of the rental buildings. That or I think Fred Trump might have kept some in his own portfolio, had outside people managing it. But when Donald took the company over, all they were building, they switched their focus to for sale condos, and which would sometimes include rental space that they would, commercial space that they would retain and then rent out. But the rest of the building would be condos. They'd sell it, gone. So that's why, they say Donald Trump only owns 5 or 6 buildings in Manhattan. Well, he built like 20, but most of them were for sale condos. So as soon as you sell it, it's gone. He changed completely to for sale condos, wasn't renting at all, never had any issues with not selling to anybody. Now, there was another story I can tell you about how they handled things with the Trump Tower in Chicago, but that's a whole different story. And again, that's time. But no. And in the 70s, Trump, when he was in his 20s or 30s, he was a manager and he was in management in the company, but he wasn't running the company. He wasn't making the philosophy for the company. So whatever they were doing, it went to Fred Trump. As soon as Donald took it over, the whole focus and orientation of what the company did change. And like I said, he went to for sale condos. That's really where he made his mark. And so on. Number 2, people want to throw out all the time that he was bankrupt. He's bankrupt like crazy. He runs all these businesses in the ground. Well, okay. Entrepreneurs, especially more aggressive entrepreneurs, start all kinds of things. And yes, so when he was in his early 40s and the 90s, he got much more aggressive and started buying casinos in Atlantic City. That hit the wall, whether it was a combination of things in the economy that changed or that was not his niche. That didn't work out. Did he try a bunch of other stuff, Trump steaks and everything else? Yes. None of them worked out. As a developer, he was a great developer. And I can tell you, he built, for example, a bunch of buildings in Florida. My wife and I were looking for a place in Florida a few years ago, and we went through some of these buildings that Trump had built. And they were nice buildings. And I mean, really nice buildings. A bunch he did on his own. A few he built as joint ventures with other builders like Related. Related's a huge, I think it's the largest high-rise developer in the country right now. And he did a couple things with them. So he was a good developer. And I'll just give you another example. You may have heard of Sam Zell. He passed away recently. He was a big Chicago developer. And just to give you one example or a reference to tie in, if you ever come in from O'Hare on the Kennedy, just when you exit O'Hare and you've got the L on your left and you're starting to come out onto the Kennedy and you've got 4 big silvery all glass office buildings on your right. They're like 20, 25 stories, big, massive. Those were built by Sam Zell. And he built a lot of stuff. Well, you might remember in the early of last decade, he also bought the Tribune Company when it was going apart. So that included the Tribune paper, which at the time was already dying because of the internet, but nobody knew exactly where that was going to go. It was a bit of a of a risk. It also included the WGN and the Tribune television stations, WGN radio, and the Cubs. So he turned right around. He sold the Cubs, which, by the way, was a great thing because the Ricketts bought it, and that's why we now have a World Series, but that's another discussion for another day. He sold a few of the TV stations, then he kept the radio station, then ended up selling it all. He got his butt handed to him. He just lost a ton of money going outside of his normal bailiwick. This guy was a developer. To go buy what was basically a media company was like putting ketchup on top of a watermelon. And he got his butt handed to him, lost a lot of money. So the point is that entrepreneurs try things all the time, and you can find their failures and say, oh, failure. Donald Trump was an excellent developer. It's not like he had his staff turning. He had people that worked with him and were loyal for a lot of years. He didn't just employ lots and lots of people. He had just the right amount of people. It was always a fairly small company. And he concentrated just on developing buildings that people would want to live in, and then doing resorts and hotels and so on, all of which he still owns. In fact, his last development that he did was the converting of what was a major post office in Washington, D.C., turned it over to a Trump hotel, which he since then sold. That was the last thing he developed just before he started running for office. In fact, that was the loan that he took out that they ended up using to go against him when they tried to bankrupt him with all the lawfare that they came to him with, with all that stuff starting about 2 years ago, that they continue to this day, including Jack Smith coming out with another supposed bomb yesterday that just hit the wall. Will mean nothing and is meaning nothing. Anyway, coming up on the bottom of the hour, it's Jeff Michaels at 1410 WRMN. After the break, we're going to come back. We're going to get a little bit more into some of Kamala Harris's policies, how she's pandering to black men and pandering to people, and her panic moves at the end, and how this ain't going to work, as far as I'm concerned. Don't forget our number, 847-931-1410. Got anything you want to talk about? I'm here. It's Jeff Michaels, 1410 WRMN.
WRMN, the talk of the town.
Thanks mainly to Hollywood and academia, Gen Z has been tainted. They're the first generation in American history raised to hate this country. It's likely our last chance to keep them from taking us all off the cliff. Have a nice day from the Jeff Michaels Show.
Yes, and that's us. We are all smiles and sunshine and happiness and wonderfulness. Jeff Michaels at 1410 WRMN, and we're talking about the changing Republican Party. How is it changing? Why is it changing? Who is it changing with? And so on. And it's been fascinating to watch. And at the end of the day, I find my notes here. When you look at, I'll give you an example. There's about 20, I want to say at least 20 now, black conservative podcasters out there. These guys are all young. I would say in their 20s, early 30s. They're all very sharp. I'm not going to give you any names now, but you can just Google black conservative podcasters and they will all come up. And these guys are putting stuff out every day, multiple times a day. They're coming up. They have great clips to talk about into the critique. And it just gives you one example. I mean, in 2016, 2020, most black people, even if they were to, most anybody, even if they were favoring or supporting Trump, didn't want to say it. Didn't tell anybody. A lot different today when you hear people like Jillian Michaels, who was all left all the time, Anna Kasparian, one of the two young Turks. She has now also come out and left the left, and she's become very vocal about it. I mean, Bill Maher has been pretty big about it, about staying normal. I mean, I used to not be able to stand Bill Maher. Now I like him. I don't know that he's changed so much. Maybe the shifting of everything has made me to accept, that liberal view a little bit more. And I should also establish that too. Another talk show host, Dennis Prager, who I listen to a lot, correctly separates leftists versus the liberals. The leftists, in my opinion, are evil people. And it's the hard left, and they have taken over a lot of the party. And that's part of the problem. Liberals have a good set of values. They want to do the right thing. They're just naive, in my humble opinion. But they want to do the right thing. But more and more of those are coming over. And when I say there's so many people coming to the Republican Party, it's interestingly so many former Democrats who are now saying they're independent, but like they're going to vote for Trump because they got to vote for somebody, as opposed to the old Republicans that are going to stay old Republicans. They're going to be gone forever. And I say, good riddance to them. And what's the change? What has this new Republican Party done? What has Trump done to the party that's made it so different? Well, the old Republican Party was very polite, got along to get along, didn't fight real hard, and as a result, allowed the left to completely take over the culture. They took over academia. They took over Hollywood. They took over media. They took everything over. And they did so knowing they've got plenty of gullible people out there who don't think for themselves, and they live for groupthink, and that's the way it is. And boom, let's put this out, and we'll cement most of them our way. And I would agree that's true. Good news is there's a lot of people, more from flyover country, that aren't listening to the media, that think about things their own way, and are now going to vote differently. I mean, we've seen so many of these clips now of Trump's rally in the Bronx or other examples of, I saw one the other day of Don Lemon, surprisingly to him, going through some crowd. He said he was just doing a man in the street, walking up to people, putting a microphone in front of people's face and asking what they're voting for. And a lot of them, especially a lot of black guys, said Trump. And, you know, again, it's almost like in vogue with some of these people to come out and say they're voting for Trump. In 2016 and 2020, nobody would admit it, even if they were going to. But a lot of these people wouldn't even consider it. Anna Kasparian said as recently as 4 years ago, you know, she would just blue, check, all the way down. You know, it kind of started with Dave Rubin about 7-8 years ago when he left the Young Turks. He started to wake up, and he was one of the first to come out there and say, I'm a gay Republican. And by the way, anybody who comes out and they say, I'm a gay Republican, or conservative, or I'm an African-American conservative, I just applaud them. They become my hero because they can get up and they realize I'm looking at the bigger picture. I'm looking at what's right for me. And I'm not going to listen to what these elite goofballs who, if challenged, run away, tell me. And whenever Harris is challenged on anything, it sure seems like she runs away, which is a good segue into what I was going to talk about. And that is, if you look on her website, where she never talks about policies. You can ask her any way you can. She's been asked all over the place, up and down, and she avoids it. And she dances around it. Even when asked about it at during this interview with Brett Baer, she said, my policies you can find on my website. That was it. That's all she said. So one of the things that you see on her website, and one of the things that she's come out with, we're going to talk about. The Harris-Walz policy, Kamala Harris will create an opportunity agenda for black men. Okay? Well, what does that mean, first of all? Why just black men? And why now? Well, we know why now. Because they're losing all this percentage of the black votes, and now she's got to come down and pander to them. She's doing what I would call panic pandering. Same thing like she did with the border. You know, they're coming out and saying, look, Trump stopped the border bill. He's the one who wants to kill it because he's the one who wants to run on something and not fix something. Really? For 3.5 years, we talked about the border suddenly being open, millions of people coming through, and Mayorkas was coming out, the border is secure. Really? Yeah, so is this, bud. You know, I mean, the border is secure. You might as well say, you're stupid. At least that's what we think. Don't ask me any more questions because we have our own agenda. All of a sudden, when they start getting into the race and his polls start tanking because of it, and the base electorate is paying more attention to it than he thought they would, all of a sudden they were interested in taking care of the border. So they come out with this ridiculous bill, which still allowed, it was 5,000 a day to come through before they started cutting it off. I mean, it was ridiculous. And it was just to shut people up. And then she comes back and she says, what? They killed the bill? No, they didn't. The first day in office, Biden wrote a bunch of executive orders undoing all the stuff that Trump had did, which had brought down illegal crossings to the lowest number in like 40 years. And in the course of 2 months, we went from 2 or 3 years of the lowest crossings to 3.5 years of by far times like 6, the highest number of crossings. So it's panic pandering. So Kamala Harris create an opportunity agenda for black men. The first one, provide 1 million loans that are fully forgivable up to $20,000 for black entrepreneurs and others to start a business. All right, well, let's pull this one apart. Provide 1 million loans. Does that mean person 1,000,001 is SOL? Where do you cut it off? Does that mean Mr. 999,999, he gets in just under the wire? I mean, it's like a radio contest. And then it says they're fully forgivable. Well, that means it's not a loan. 1 million loans that are fully forgivable. Well, that means it's actually just, we're going to give it to you. It's a fully givable, is what they should be calling it, of $20,000 for Black entrepreneurs and others. Okay, so what does the others mean to start a business? Oh, that means anybody that we want. For anything that we want. We don't know who, we don't know what. We're not going to specify it now, but we will in time. Don't bother us, get out of our face. And that doesn't even speak to how unconstitutional it is. And by the way, they know. They know this could never happen. And if I was a Black person and I was thinking about who I'm going to vote, how you don't know who you're going to vote for at this point is well beyond me, but that's another story. If I was a Black person and I was thinking who to vote for, and I saw this, I would think, holy moly. I mean, do they think we're this stupid? Does she think that we're this ignorant, that this is going to make a difference? So all of a sudden, you're going to tell me you're going to give me $20,000 to start a business because I'm Black? Hello? I'm going to guess that she probably loses more Black votes from this than gets it, because people are so smart. They read this, and people aren't dumb, and they read this and they think like WTF, Second one, support education training and mentorship programs that lead to good paying jobs for Black men, including pathways to become teachers. Support education training. What's education training? Training them to become educated? Educating them to become trained? What does that mean? And mentorship programs. Okay, we've heard this forever. What kind of program does the federal government put out that's going to mentor who for what? And it says lead to good paying jobs for Black men, including pathways to become teachers. Okay, why just teachers? Let's think about this whole sentence. Support education training and mentorship programs that lead to good paying jobs for Black men, including pathways to become teachers. Why not teachers and, pilots? Be another discussion. Or delivery people, or engineers. Oh, that's above, you think, what they can do? I mean, the whole thing is insulting. Protect cryptocurrency investments so Black men who make them know that their money is safe. So if a white person or a Hispanic or an Asian, they do cryptocurrency, they got to live on their own. But Black men should be able to have it so they know that their money is safe. So what does that mean? Does that mean if I'm a Black person and I buy some crypto, that I can then tell the government what I paid for it? So if I ever have to sell it for less than that, they're going to cover me? What does it mean? I mean, talk about fluff that means nothing. Like most of their responses to any political question. Launch a national health initiative focused on the illnesses that disproportionately impact Black men. Okay, so now nothing about universal health care, just a national health initiative focused on illnesses that disproportionately impact Black men. Well, besides sickle cell anemia, and maybe I'm being ignorant if there's other things that have come out, what does that include? And again, you're going to take a portion of the feds and you're going to focus them on helping Black men and illnesses that are, not Black women, by the way, just Black men, that's what it says, illnesses that are disproportionately affecting them. What, how, when? I mean, hello? The last one is my favorite. This one is my favorite. Legalize recreational marijuana and create opportunities for Black Americans to succeed in this new industry. Now, I know part of the reason behind it is because there were so many Blacks over all the years that were arrested for marijuana possession and did jail time or were in jail. Okay, I understand all that. And I know that in Illinois, they focused on giving a lot of these licenses to Black entrepreneurs because of that reason. All good with those things. But in terms of this program, something coming from the federal government that supposedly is a reason to vote for somebody for president. She says, okay, are you Black? Then we'll talk about we want to legalize recreational marijuana every place, obviously, because it's not in every state yet. Create opportunities for Black Americans to succeed in this new industry. So they isolate this out, saying this is your speed. Well, I mean, how insulting to me. of all these industries and all these suggestions as to how they're going to help a Black person make something of themselves, I would say, you know what? Stay to yourself. I'll take care of myself. And that's, if you look at her other policy items, same kind of crap. You can shoot holes in every single one. And if you saw the interview, you saw how she answers. She doesn't. She just shuts you up. And we're going to hear some of that and critique some of that when we come back around these. It is 1:46. This is 1410 WRMN. Jeff Michaels. Be right back.
El Diablo Cantina, located by Spring Hill Mall at 113 Southwestern in Carpentersville.
Find out how to dispose of them properly. Visit www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
Only common sense and logic is allowed. Wisdom is a bonus. It's Jeff Michaels on 1410 WRMN.
And if you saw any of Kamala Harris's interviews, especially the ones that happened up until this last one, she never answered any of the questions at all. None of them. In fact, all she did was employ what is the typical lefty way of talking politics, and it is just to shut you up and force you quiet. We're going to listen to a couple of these anyway, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is the first question she was asked when she talked to Brett Baird the other day on Fox News about illegal immigrations. Cut one, go.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Easy
Well,
question.
I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration, because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a number, do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have a
estimate of 6 million people have been released.
Stop it. I'm not finished. What you should have said is, I'm not finished filibustering you. I'm not finished not answering the question. I'm not finished making my own supporters happy. Which, by the way, is just amazing when you think about how people watch these interviews and have 100% opposite views of what went on. Kind of started the OJ trial. But since then, it's just amazing. And I think Barack Obama made it much worse. For another day. We continue on.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority.
Really? Does that bother you?
For us as a nation and for the American people.
First question.
And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with...
Stop it. If you tighten up penalties, what does that mean? You can tighten up all you want, but if you're not going to actually enforce them, all you're doing is pandering to the rest of us.
Points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did. And we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is...
All right, stop. See, all she's talked about that's specific here is that we're going to put more agents there. First of all, 1,500 agents. Well, that'll make a lot of difference. What is it, about 2,200 miles across? 1,500 agents? And by the way, it's not like they work 24 hours a day, each of them. They work 8 hours a day or thereabouts. So that means you need, 3, 4 per day. 1,500 you're going to add. Ain't going to do much. and they're going to add all these judges. All she said was, we're going to make it easier for the ones that we allow to come across to then become citizens. And by the way, if you don't think that's their goal, there's a Chuck Schumer clip out from about 3 months ago where he came out and he said it. We want to make everybody a citizen, hurry it up, pathway to citizenship. Right, so they can be in charge for the rest of our lives. That's all they want to do. Go ahead, finish it.
Scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country, killing people.
Did she ever answer the question? I didn't hear an answer. A lot of dancing. I can answer it. We've had at least 8 million allowed to come across and stay. That doesn't include at least 500,000 per year gotaways. So we know there's at least 10 million, if not more, that got across that they didn't even want to acknowledge until it started hitting them in the polls. And that's a fact. She keeps talking about turning the page. She wants to turn the page. Really? From what? You've been there for almost 4 years. You want to turn the page from, well, go ahead and run this.
There's a lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran.
I'm sorry, stop it. My mistake. Number 6. Let's go with it. This is
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Stop it. Isn't that the end of the election, basically? Didn't she basically blow it with that? I mean, they forced Joe Biden out, mainly because he was showing that his dementia had gotten the best of him, but whatever host of reasons they were able to get him out, and now they're saying turn the page. From what? From you? No, from Donald Trump. Wait, he hasn't been president for the last 4 years. Go ahead, let's hear it. Continue. I'm getting
Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I know.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like...
So what did she just say in all that? I'm not going to change anything. It's not going to continue it. And we're turning the page from Donald Trump. Wait a second. Haven't you been doing that for the last 4 years? Oh, you're turning the page from him because he's still out there. Isn't that what all the lawfare is about? Because we think there's a chance he's going to get elected. And by the way, probably the biggest irony in all that's happening, because it is starting to look every day more and more like Trump's going to win. They did it to themselves. And they can't help themselves. And they keep doing it. And if you think back, you realize when this whole thing was starting, DeSantis was way out in front of them. People were thinking, Trump's done. Tell him to stay away. Don't even try this again. When the lawfare started and the first charges first started coming out, that is when the poll numbers started shifting for him. And the more they've done it, the more they've shifted in his favor. You can go back and you can check that. But they haven't learned it. Jack Smith is still coming out with stuff yesterday thinking it's going to derail it. I mean, watching MSNBC and CNN on election night is going to be so much fun. I can't tell you. Anyway, I digress. Go ahead, start up again.
Every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. For example,
give us a new idea. You haven't heard a fresh and new idea yet.
I spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan.
The Republicans who are on stage with her, Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, and the other ones who are tied to the old Republican Party and refuse to let go, refuse to realize that we're trying to save the party for them too, but they don't want to believe it. We'll leave them behind. By the sound of the music, I think it means we've run out of time. So I was worried so much about one or two things with this first show. You know, you have this nightmare of coming out onto a stage, you don't know your lines. I had this weird thought I was going to run out of things by 10 minutes in, but no, it's the opposite. I didn't cover hardly any of it. So, I will be back here next Saturday, 1 o'clock, same time, same station, and we will talk a little bit more. How much, Matt, back in the studio, how much time do we have? Oh, well, then I guess I better talk fast, because that's my specialty. Oh, great to have you again. Great to be here. I look forward to our next time. This is Jeff Michaels, The Jeff Michaels Show at 1410 WRMN.
Raising your crops all season long, only to discover a micronutrient deficiency is robbing your yield potential.